Bring her to me now.
The Korean Mafia boss ordered when he caught his black maid dancing alone while cleaning. Caroline had been dancing alone in the penthouse for maybe 2 minutes when she felt it. That electric shift in the air that meant she wasn't alone anymore. She kept dancing anyway. After 3 years of making herself invisible, being seen felt dangerously good. What she didn't know was that the man watching her from the shadows already knew exactly who she was, and he'd been looking for her for a very long time. The park estate occupied 47 acres of upstate New York countryside. The kind of property that housed old money, new power, and people who valued discretion above everything else. Caroline Johnson couldn't normally afford to breathe the air in a place like this. But 6 months ago, Ashley had gotten her the maid position after Caroline's third failed interview at yet another accounting firm. That had been 183 days ago. Now she stood in the grand ballroom at 11:47 p.m. surveying the aftermath of the annual charity gala. Crystal champagne flutes abandoned on marble-top tables. Gold-rimmed plates stacked by the service elevator. The lingering scent of wealth so old it didn't need to announce itself. Her reflection stared back from floor-to-ceiling windows. Black woman in her late 20s. Natural curls pulled back in the regulation bun, wearing the estate standard uniform, black dress, white apron, comfortable shoes. The dress code was designed to make staff invisible. And for 6 months, Caroline had perfected the art of disappearing. In the doorway, Minho Park stopped breathing. He'd come downstairs at 11:45 to check on the cleanup progress before his 1 a.m. conference call with Tokyo. His insomnia meant late nights were productive nights. He wasn't expecting her. The new maid, the one he'd barely noticed in the 6 months she'd been on staff. Ashley had hired her. Something about being an old friend who needed work. But now she was moving through his ballroom like she owned it, like the marble floors were hers, like the chandeliers existed solely to light her performance. And Minho's entire world tilted sideways because he knew that face, not from staff meetings or household schedules, but from news coverage, from a trial he'd followed obsessively 3 years ago. Caroline Maxwell, the brilliant forensic accountant who testified against her own firm in the Whitmore fraud case, who destroyed her career to expose corruption, who disappeared from public life after the trial ended. She'd been here in his house, invisible for 6 months. The woman he'd been searching for, someone who understood financial crimes, who wasn't bound by conventional ethics, who was brave enough to operate in the gray zones where law and justice didn't always align. By morning, Caroline Johnson's life as an invisible maid would be over, and Caroline Maxwell's resurrection would begin. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight. It always warms my heart to see our storytelling family stretch across the world. And if you're new here, this is exactly why you need to hit that subscribe button now, because I promise you, this maid's journey from invisible to indispensable is about to take turns you won't want to miss. Now, let's get back to the moment Minho Park decided to change Caroline's life forever. You think you understand invisibility? Let me tell you what real disappearing looks like. It's not magic tricks or childhood games. It's erasing yourself so completely that people look through you instead of at you. It's standing in rooms where decisions are made and being so forgettable that no one remembers you witnessed them. It's the special talent of service workers everywhere, but Caroline Maxwell had elevated it to an art form. 3 years ago, she'd been someone who mattered. A rising star at Whitmore Financial with an uncanny ability to follow money through the most complex systems. The kind of talent that gets you noticed, promoted, courted by competitors. Until the day she noticed discrepancies in accounts managed by her mentor, Bradley Hoffman. Offshore transfers, manipulated statements, elderly clients whose retirement funds were mysteriously shrinking. She'd done everything right. Approached Hoffman privately first. Taken it to the board when he stonewalled her. Finally testified in federal court when the board tried to bury it. Her testimony was flawless, irrefutable. 5 executives went to prison. Countless victims received partial restitution. And Caroline Maxwell's reward? Blacklisted from every financial firm in the country. Death threats serious enough to make her change her name. A professional death so complete she couldn't even get an interview for entry-level positions. Invisibility wasn't just a choice after that. It was survival. But survival isn't living. And sometimes the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Like how it feels to take up space without apology. How it feels to move with confidence instead of caution. How it feels to exist fully in your own skin. That's what happened in the ballroom that night. Caroline connected her earbuds, scrolled to a playlist labeled, Before, music from the time when she still had a future, and let her body remember who she used to be. Min-ho Park hadn't built his empire by missing details. The son of a Korean diplomat father and African-American mother, he'd navigated two worlds his entire life, never fully accepted in either, determined to create his own. His legitimate businesses, luxury hotels, tech investments, import-export, were just the surface. Beneath them ran networks of influence and obligation that operated by different rules. Some called him gangster, crime lord, mafia boss. He preferred problem solver. And Min-ho Park solved problems that existed in the space where law and justice didn't always overlap. He'd been following the Whitmore case since it broke. Not because he had money invested, he was too careful for that, but because he recognized in Caroline Maxwell something rare. Someone willing to sacrifice everything for principles. Someone whose moral compass pointed true north but who understood sometimes you had to travel through shadows to get there. He'd been looking for someone like her for his organization. Someone who could trace financial crimes with precision. Someone whose testimony would be credible if things ever went sideways. Someone who understood both sides of the system. And now here she was, in his house, dancing like she'd forgotten to be afraid. Mr. Park. His assistant, David, materialized at his elbow. Tokyo is on standby for the call. Min-ho didn't look away from Caroline. Cancel it. Reschedule for tomorrow. Sir, the Nakamura deal. Can wait. His voice dropped lower. Bring her to my office. Now. The electric feeling returned. Caroline felt it like a current against her skin. She turned, earbuds still in, body still swaying, and found herself face to face with David, Min-ho's omnipresent assistant. His face was carefully blank, but something in his posture communicated urgency. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Park would like to see you. The music died in her ears. Reality crashed back. She was a maid, dancing instead of working, caught by the owner of the house. Of course he wanted to see her. Probably to fire her. She followed David through corridors she'd only cleaned, never walked as a guest. Up the private elevator to the third-floor wing that housed Min-ho's personal office. A space she'd never been allowed to enter. The office was exactly what she'd expected from glimpses through doorways. Minimalist. Expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate. A massive desk of some exotic hardwood. Leather furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Min-ho Park stood with his back to the door, looking out over his domain. Even from behind, power radiated from him. 6 feet of perfectly tailored confidence. When he turned, Caroline felt rather than saw his complete focus settle on her. Do you know why you're here, Ms. Maxwell? Her real name hit like physical contact. 3 years of careful anonymity shattered in 5 syllables. My name is Johnson, she said, the lie automatic after so much repetition. No. He moved toward her with deliberate steps. Your name is Caroline Maxwell. Former senior forensic accountant at Whitmore Financial. Star witness in the largest financial fraud case of the last decade. The woman who sacrificed her career to expose corruption. Each fact laid between them like evidence. Each one stripping away another layer of her carefully constructed invisibility. How long have you known? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Not the careful, deferential tone of Caroline Johnson, house staff. Something older. Sharper. Since Ashley recommended you 6 months ago. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Not an invitation. A command. Caroline remained standing. Small resistances were all she had left. I make it my business to know who enters my house, Minho continued, seemingly unbothered by her defiance. Background checks are standard for all staff. Yours was interesting. So you've been watching me for 6 months. Why the summons tonight? A smile touched his mouth but didn't reach his eyes. Because tonight I saw the woman you've been hiding. Not the invisible maid, but the Caroline Maxwell I've been looking for. Looking for. The words hung between them. Why would you be looking for me? Minho leaned against his desk, studying her with unnerving intensity. Because I need someone with your particular talents. Someone who understands financial systems from the inside. Someone who can trace money through the most complex structures. Someone with both technical expertise and moral courage. For what? For helping people the system has failed. He reached behind him, handed her a file. Like the Kim family. Against her better judgment, Caroline opened it. Inside were photographs of an elderly Korean couple standing outside a small restaurant. Financial statements. Loan documents with interest rates that made her eyes widen. The Kims immigrated 30 years ago. Built a successful restaurant in Queens. Traditional Korean cuisine, family recipes. When their son was diagnosed with leukemia 5 years ago, they took loans to cover medical expenses. The son died. The lenders, connected to the John organization, manipulated the terms. The Kims have paid back 3 times the principal, but the debt keeps growing. Caroline's trained eye scanned the documents, spotting irregularities immediately. Compounded interest calculated incorrectly. Hidden fees. Terms that changed between agreement pages. Classic predatory lending, executed with unusual sophistication. This is financial fraud, she said, professional instincts overriding caution. They could go to the authorities. Minho's laugh was short and without humor. The authorities. The same system that protected Whitmore's executives and discarded you. The Johns have connections throughout Queens. Police look the other way. Judges receive generous donations. The Kims tried legal channels. Got nowhere. The reality was familiar. Painfully so. Systems designed to protect those with power, not those without. What do you want from me? Caroline closed the file, handed it back. I want you to do what you do better than anyone. Follow the money. Document the fraud. Build a case so airtight the Johns can't escape it. And then I handle the rest. The implication hung between them. Nothing illegal specified, but boundaries clearly crossed. Gray zones entered deliberately. Why would I help you? She kept her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. I testified against corruption. I don't enable it. Corruption. Minho repeated the word thoughtfully. Is it corrupt to help an elderly couple being exploited? To use alternative methods when traditional ones have failed? To create justice where the system won't? You're talking about vigilante finance. I'm talking about using power to protect those without it. He moved closer, not threateningly, but with the steady confidence of someone accustomed to control. The world isn't divided neatly into legal and illegal, Ms. Maxwell. You learned that the hard way, didn't you? When following the rules cost you everything. The words hit with painful accuracy. She had followed the rules. Had believed in systems and institutions and the power of truth. All it got her was professional death and a life in hiding. I'm offering you a chance to use your exceptional skills again, Minho continued. A salary that reflects your value. A position with real impact. And my personal guarantee of protection. As your what? In-house forensic accountant for a criminal enterprise. As my partner in correcting injustices the system perpetuates. No offense taken at the accusation. Just calm certainty. You've spent 3 years hiding your brilliance. Burying your potential. Punishing yourself for doing the right thing. I'm offering you purpose again. Purpose. The word resonated in spaces she tried to keep numb. What was her purpose now? Cleaning rooms she'd never own. Maintaining invisibility until even she forgot who she used to be. I need time to think, she said finally. Take tonight. He handed her a business card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. His private number handwritten on the back. My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Come as Caroline Maxwell, not Caroline Johnson. She took the card, their fingers brushing momentarily. The contact sent an unexpected current up her arm, like static electricity but warmer, more deliberate. One more thing, he said as she turned to leave. Thank you for the dance. It's been a long time since anything surprised me. You did. Caroline didn't sleep that night. Lay awake in her small room in the staff quarters, turning Minho's offer over in her mind. The rational part of her recognized the danger. Working for a man whose business clearly extended into illegal territory. Using her skills to enable activities that existed in moral gray zones. Risking whatever remained of her professional ethics. But another part, a part that had been silent for 3 years, whispered of possibility. Of using her mind for something that mattered again. Of helping people like the Kims who had nowhere else to turn. Of emerging from invisibility into purpose. By morning, she hadn't decided. But she changed out of her uniform into the one good outfit she'd kept from her previous life. Black pants, crisp white shirt, blazer that had cost 2 weeks' salary back when salary meant something. She let her natural curls frame her face instead of pulling them back into the regulation bun. Small reclamations of identity. Minho's office looked different in daylight. Less intimidating, more functional. Maps of financial networks covered one wall. Security screens displaying various properties another. A workspace for someone who controlled multiple operations simultaneously. He stood when she entered, eyes taking in the transformation from maid to professional with evident approval. You came. I haven't decided yet, she clarified, taking the seat he indicated. I have questions first. Of course. What exactly are you involved in? I need the truth, not the sanitized version. Minho considered her for a moment, then nodded as if she'd passed some test. My legitimate businesses you know about. Hotels, tech investments, import-export. I also provide alternative conflict resolution for certain communities. Protection services. Asset recovery. Financial intervention when traditional channels fail. You're a crime boss. Direct, unvarnished. I'm a problem solver. Sometimes those problems exist outside conventional legal frameworks. No denial, no justification. My father came to America with nothing. Built something through sheer will. Was exploited at every turn by systems designed to keep outsiders vulnerable. I protect those the system doesn't. By breaking the law. By recognizing that law and justice aren't always the same thing. His eyes held hers, intensity undiminished in daylight. You know this better than most. What happened after your testimony? Did the system protect you? Did following the law bring justice? The question hit nerves still raw after 3 years. No, the system hadn't protected her. Whitmore's executives had received minimal sentences, most already free. The firm paid fines it could easily afford, rebranded, continued operating. The only person who faced real consequences was Caroline herself. What would I actually be doing? She asked instead of answering. Financial investigation. Asset tracing. Building cases against those who exploit financial systems to prey on vulnerable people. Exactly what you did at Whitmore, but for clients who can't afford traditional firms. And after I build these cases, I handle resolution through various channels. Some conventional, some less so. Meaning threats. Violence. Meaning whatever proves most effective. His honesty was disarming. I won't lie to you, Caroline. Some of what we do exists in gray areas. But our purpose is helping those with nowhere else to turn. She should leave. Should walk out and never look back. Should protect whatever remained of her professional ethics. The Kims, she said instead. Show me their case again. He slid the file across the desk, a smile touching his lips. He knew he had her. For 4 days, Caroline disappeared into the Kim family's financial nightmare. Min-ho gave her an office adjacent to his, equipment that made her previous professional setup look primitive, and access to information sources that probably weren't entirely legal. She didn't ask where the data came from. Some questions were safer left unasked. The work consumed her. Tracing loan documents. Reconstructing interest calculations. Finding patterns in deliberate obfuscation. It felt like resurrection, using her mind for something that mattered after 3 years of forced intellectual hibernation. Min-ho gave her space to work, checking in periodically with questions that showed genuine understanding of financial systems. He brought her coffee exactly how she liked it, though she'd never told him her preference. Ordered food when she forgot to eat. Created an environment where her mind could do what it did best, solve complex puzzles with absolute precision. "You're different when you work," he observed on the 3rd night, watching her hands fly across the keyboard. "Like when you were dancing. You forget to be afraid." She hadn't realized he'd been watching that closely. Hadn't known he'd seen through her carefully constructed walls to the fear underneath. The observation felt too intimate, too close to truth. "I'm not afraid," she lied. His smile was slight but genuine. "Yes, you are. But not of the work. You're afraid of what happens when the work reminds you who you really are." On the 5th day, Caroline had the complete picture. The John organization had systematically defrauded the Kim family through a sophisticated scheme designed to keep them in perpetual debt. Hidden fees, manipulated interest calculations, deliberately confusing terms that changed between document versions. "They've already paid back the principal 4 times over," she told Min-ho, spreading the evidence across his desk. "Here's the proof. Every transaction, every manipulation, every lie in their books." He studied the documentation with the focus he brought to everything. This would hold up in court. It would, if the Kims were willing to testify against people who've threatened their family. If the police weren't compromised. If the system wasn't rigged against immigrants with limited English. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. When had she become this cynical? When the truth cost you everything, a voice inside her whispered. Min-ho looked at her then, really looked at her, with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but instead made her feel seen in a way she hadn't been in years. "The system is designed to protect those with power," he agreed quietly. "Which is why sometimes justice requires operating outside it." 3 days later, the Kim family received notice that their debt had been cleared. The loan sharks disappeared from Queens entirely. Electronic records vanished. Paper trails led nowhere. Caroline didn't ask what happened. Some answers you don't want to hear spoken aloud. But when Mrs. Kim brought homemade kimchi and tears of gratitude to Min-ho's office, when her husband bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the floor, when their daughter translated their Korean with a voice choked by emotion, "You saved our family, our home, our legacy," something inside Caroline shifted. Justice and legality aren't always the same thing. She'd learned that lesson when following the rules had destroyed her. Now she was learning it again from the other side. "Dinner," Min-ho said afterward. Not a request, not quite a command. Something in between. She should have refused. Should have maintained professional distance. Should have remembered all the reasons this man was dangerous beyond his connections and power. "Okay," she said instead. The restaurant was achingly elegant. Private room, soft lighting, wait staff who appeared and disappeared with silent efficiency. Min-ho ordered in Korean without consulting a menu, a quiet exchange that reminded Caroline she knew only fragments of this man. "Why did you help the Kims?" she asked when they were alone, wine breathing between them. "What are they to you?" He studied his wine, swirling it gently. "My father arrived in America with nothing. Korean diplomat who fell in love with my mother, an African-American law student. When he chose her over an arranged marriage, his family disowned him. The Kim's grandfather gave him work in their first restaurant when no one else would hire an Asian man married to a black woman. Gave them food when money ran short. Some debts can never be repaid with money. The personal history surprised her. It shouldn't have. Even powerful men begin somewhere. And the loan sharks, she pressed. What happened to them? Do you really want to know? His eyes held hers, offering truth with the understanding it couldn't be unheard. Caroline considered the question honestly. No, she finally said. I don't think I do. Something like approval flickered across his face. Smart woman. The wine loosened something between them. Not just professional boundaries but the careful guards they both maintained. He asked about her work before the scandal. She asked about his family. Questions that should have felt intrusive instead felt necessary. How does a financial prodigy end up scrubbing floors? The question wasn't cruel, just direct. Minho didn't soften his inquiries with social niceties. When you expose corruption at one of the world's largest investment firms, you don't just lose your job. The words felt like opening a wound that had never properly healed. You get blacklisted. Your reputation gets destroyed. Your expertise becomes a liability instead of an asset. And when death threats start arriving at your apartment, changing your name and disappearing starts to seem reasonable. Death threats? His voice sharpened. People lost billions because of my testimony. Some weren't happy about it. She tried for casual, missed by miles. My former mentor made sure everyone knew I was to blame. Called me an opportunist, a traitor. Said I fabricated evidence for personal gain. Did you? No. The answer came instantly, fierce with lingering outrage. I found irregularities in the accounts. Brought them to Bradley privately first, gave him the chance to explain. He said he'd handle it. 2 weeks later, I discovered he was actively covering up, moving funds to hide the evidence. I couldn't be part of that. So you went to the authorities. I went to the board first. They thanked me for my concern and did nothing. That's when I went to the SEC. She took a long sip of wine. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were. Was I? 3 years later, most of those executives are already out on early release. The firm paid fines they could afford, rebranded, and continued operating. The only person who lost everything was me. The bitterness tasted familiar on her tongue. Tell me how that's right. Minho was quiet for a moment, studying her with that unsettling focus. It's not right. It's reality. Systems protect those who build them, not those who challenge them. That doesn't make your choice wrong. It makes the system corrupt. The understanding in his voice was unexpected. Dangerous. It made her want to tell him more, to unburden herself of secrets carried too long alone. I have nightmares, she admitted. Not about the threats or losing my career. About the elderly clients who lost their retirement savings. The college funds that disappeared. The real people hurt by what my firm did. I couldn't stop it. I could only expose it after the damage was done. That guilt isn't yours to carry. Then whose is it? Bradley walks free. The firm still operates. Someone has to remember the harm they caused. Minho reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The contact was brief, unexpected, electric. That responsibility isn't the same as guilt. You can remember without punishing yourself. The touch lingered even after he withdrew his hand. A ghost of warmth that reminded her body it had been 3 years since anyone had touched her with purpose rather than accidental contact. I could tell you they maintained professional boundaries after that night. That the wall between employer and employee remained intact. That would be another comfortable lie. The truth has sharper edges. Something shifted between them. Subtle at first. His hand at the small of her back guiding her through a doorway. Her staying later than necessary when they worked on cases. The way his eyes followed her movements. The way she grew conscious of her body in his presence. Caroline took a second case. A Korean-American entrepreneur whose business partner was siphoning funds through clever accounting tricks. Then a third, a family fighting an insurance company denying claims through deliberate paperwork manipulation. With each case, the boundaries of her comfort with moral gray areas expanded. With each success, the confidence she'd lost began to return. With each night working beside Min-ho, the tension between them grew. "You're rebuilding yourself," he observed one night, watching her piece together a money trail with the focus that made her exceptional. "Finding your power again. Is that what this is?" She didn't look up from her work. Safer that way. Safer not to meet the intensity in his eyes. "You know it is. I recognized it that first night, watching you dance. You've spent 3 years making yourself small. But that's not who you are." The observation felt like exposure. Like he'd peeled back layers she'd carefully constructed and seen something she'd tried to bury. "You don't know who I am." The defensive words came automatically. "I know you better than you think." His voice dropped lower, intimate in the quiet office. "I know you're brilliant when you forget to be afraid. I know you care about justice more than rules. I know you're still punishing yourself for choices that weren't yours to make." Caroline looked up then, couldn't help it. Found him watching her with that focus that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. "Why did you really hire me, Min-ho?" "The truth." He didn't hesitate. "Because I recognized something in you. Something valuable. Something wasted on invisibility. My financial expertise. That's part of it." His honesty was unsettling. "But not all. I saw you dancing, confident, alive, free. I wanted to know that woman. Not just for her skills, but for her fire. For the courage it takes to keep moving when the world has tried to break you." The words hung between them, too honest to dismiss, too intense to safely acknowledge. "That sounds dangerously close to personal interest," she managed, aiming for professional detachment and missing by miles. "It is personal. No evasion, no softening. I want your mind at work and I want your fire in my life. I should be clear about that so you can make an informed choice." An informed choice. As if she had options. As if she wasn't already compromised by working in his gray areas, by allowing his world to become hers, by feeling more alive in his presence than she had in 3 years of hiding. "And if I choose to keep this professional?" The question was hypothetical. They both knew it. "Then it stays professional. You keep your position. Nothing changes." His eyes never left hers. "But I don't think that's what you want." The kiss happened before either of them acknowledged the possibility. One moment they were separated by her desk and professional pretense. The next, she was in his space or he was in hers, the distinction meaningless, and his mouth was on hers with an intensity that matched everything else about him. There was nothing gentle about it. Nothing tentative. It was recognition and claim and challenge all at once. His hands framed her face, holding her steady while his mouth took possession of hers with single-minded focus. Caroline should have pulled away. Should have remembered all the reasons this was complicated and dangerous and potentially disastrous. Instead, she matched his intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his with 3 years of pent-up need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality came crashing back. The professional boundaries shattered. The power dynamics impossible to ignore. The vulnerability of wanting someone who already held too much power over her life. "This is a mistake," she whispered against his mouth. "Is it?" His hands hadn't released her, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with surprising gentleness. "Or is it the first honest thing you've allowed yourself in 3 years?" The question hit too close to truth. Since the scandal, she'd been existing rather than living. Surviving rather than thriving. Hiding rather than being. Min-ho made her feel seen. Dangerous, terrifying, necessary. "I should go." The words lacked conviction. "You should stay." His voice was rough with restrained desire. "But only if you're choosing it freely. Only if you understand what you're choosing." "And what am I choosing?" "Me. With everything that means. Not just tonight, but tomorrow. Not just desire, but complication. Not just pleasure, but risk. The honesty was brutal and beautiful. No pretense that this could be simple or casual or easily contained. Caroline had spent 3 years playing it safe, making herself small, avoiding risk. Where had it gotten her? A life half lived in the shadows of what might have been. "I'm choosing," she said, and pulled him back to her. Their first night together wasn't gentle. It was hunger and heat and 3 years of Caroline's carefully controlled existence breaking open under Minho's hands. His penthouse was a minimalist temple of luxury, all clean lines and expensive simplicity, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate's manicured grounds. Neither of them noticed the view. There was nothing tentative in the way he undressed her. Nothing hesitant in how she responded. They came together with the same intensity that characterized everything between them, challenging, demanding, giving and taking in equal measure. His hands mapped her body with possessive certainty, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch, what made her forget her own name. She matched him, refusing to be passive, claiming him back with equal determination. When they finally came together, it wasn't just bodies joining but recognition. The acknowledgement that whatever was happening between them had been inevitable from that first moment he'd seen her dancing, from the first time she'd met his eyes without flinching. Afterward, tangled in sheets that cost more than a month of her former salary, reality returned in uncomfortable waves. "Regrets?" Minho asked, his hand tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Caroline considered lying. Considered all the professional and personal reasons she should regret this step across boundaries that couldn't be uncrossed. "I should," she finally said. "But I don't." His arms tightened around her. "Good, because I'm not done with you, Caroline Maxwell. We're just getting started." She fell asleep listening to his heartbeat, wondering what version of herself she'd wake up as. Morning brought clarity without regret. Sunlight streaming through massive windows, silk sheets against naked skin, and Minho already awake, watching her with that focused attention that should probably alarm her but instead made her feel valued. "We need to talk about what this means," he said, direct as always. Caroline sat up, pulling the sheet with her. The room looked different in daylight, still beautiful, but more real. Lived in. Books on the nightstand, a tablet on the dresser, a single photograph she couldn't quite make out. "I know." She pushed her hair back from her face. "This complicates everything." "It does," he agreed. "Which is why we need to establish parameters. What happens between us stays private. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it protects you. If this ends badly, I don't want your professional reputation damaged again." The thoughtfulness surprised her. "You've thought about this?" "I've thought about nothing else since I watched you dance." His honesty was disarming. "I want you, Caroline. Both versions. The brilliant strategist and the woman who moves like she owns the world. But I won't let wanting you hurt you. So we establish rules." "Yes. At work, we're professional. In private, we're..." "What? Lovers? Partners? Employer with benefits?" The labels all felt inadequate. "Honest," Minho said. "We're honest about what we want and what scares us. No games, no pretending this is casual when it isn't." Caroline pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. "I don't know if I can sustain this level of intensity. I've been numb for 3 years. Feeling this much is terrifying. Then we'll be terrified together." He moved closer, not touching, but near enough that she felt his warmth. "You don't have to do this alone. And if I need space sometimes, if I need to process or withdraw or just breathe, then you take it. But you don't disappear entirely. You don't make yourself invisible again." His eyes held hers. "That's my only condition. You can need distance, but you don't get to vanish. Deal?" She extended her hand, formal despite their nakedness. "Deal." He took it, but instead of shaking, he pulled her forward and kissed her. Slow and thorough and promising things that made her forget about boundaries entirely. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Sender, Bradley Hoffman. Subject line: We should talk. Caroline stared at her screen, coffee forgotten in her hand. Bradley Hoffman. Her former mentor. The man whose financial crimes she'd exposed. The man who'd called her a liar, an opportunist, a traitor. The man who'd made sure she couldn't work in finance again. 3 lines. I'm out. Early release. We need to clear the air. Name the place and time. What's wrong? Minho's voice from the doorway. She turned the laptop so he could see. Watched his expression shift from concern to careful assessment. You don't have to respond. I know. But her finger was already hovering over the reply button. But I think I need to. The cafe was neutral territory. Busy enough for safety, quiet enough for conversation. Minho insisted on coming despite her protests. I'm not hovering, he said in the car. I'm backup. There's a difference. They sat in a corner booth. Caroline's leg bouncing under the table, Minho's hand steady on her knee. Bradley Hoffman walked in looking nothing like the man who dominated her nightmares. Thinner, grayer, shoulders slumped with what might have been defeat or simply the weight of consequences finally felt. He spotted her, hesitated, then approached. Caroline. His voice was rougher than she remembered. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Minho's hand tightened slightly on her knee. Caroline didn't introduce him. Didn't need to. Bradley's glance took in the expensive suit, the protective positioning, the obvious connection, and understanding flickered across his face. I won't take much of your time, Bradley said, sliding into the opposite seat. I just needed to tell you something face to face. Caroline waited, her throat too tight for words. You were right. The words came out flat, exhausted. About everything. The fraud, the theft, what I'd become. I spent 2 years in federal prison convincing myself I was the victim, that you'd betrayed me out of ambition or jealousy or some personal vendetta. That the system had failed me. He paused, stared at his hands. Then about 8 months ago, I finally let myself look at what I'd actually done. The people I'd hurt. The trust I'd violated. The career I'd destroyed, yours, not mine. Mine deserved destroying. He looked up, met her eyes. You did the right thing, Caroline. You tried to tell me privately first. You gave me the chance to come clean. I chose to fight instead, to blame you instead of taking responsibility. Caroline's vision blurred. 3 years of carrying guilt and anger and doubt. Had she done the right thing, had the cost been worth it, had anything changed because of her sacrifice, suddenly shifting under the weight of this unexpected acknowledgement. I'm working with a nonprofit now, Bradley continued. Financial literacy for underserved communities. Basic stuff, honest work. It's what I should have been doing all along. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know you didn't ruin my life. You interrupted me from ruining more lives, including my own. The dam broke. Tears Caroline had held for 3 years spilled over, hot and unchecked. Minho's arm came around her shoulders, solid and grounding. I'm sorry, Bradley said quietly. That it cost you everything. That the system punished the whistleblower instead of protecting her. That's not on you. That's on all of us who made you pay for doing what was right. He stood, left the business card on the table, and walked out. Caroline cried in Minho's arms in that busy cafe, not caring who saw, finally releasing the guilt she'd carried like penance. Bradley had needed stopping. The testimony had been necessary. She could forgive herself for the cost. The job offer arrived 3 days later. Senior Financial Investigator position. At Global Financial Integrity, one of the premier investigative firms in the country. 6-figure salary, full benefits, complete professional rehabilitation. They'd been following her consulting work, they explained in the formal letter. They'd heard impressive things from satisfied clients. Caroline sat in Minho's office, the offer letter spread across his desk between them. You should consider it, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is legitimate work with a respected organization. Everything you lost 3 years ago. You want me to take it? She watched his face, looking for tells. I want you to have the choice. He leaned back in his chair, eyes unreadable. This is legitimacy, professional respect, a career that doesn't operate in gray zones. But no, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay and build something with me. But I need you to choose freely. That night, their intimacy was different. Urgent, almost frantic. Both of them trying to memorize what might be lost. His hands traced her body like he was committing every curve to memory. She matched him, refusing to be passive, claiming him back with equal fervor, neither of them speaking because words would make the choice too real. After, lying in the dark, Caroline made her decision. Not because staying was easier. Because leaving, going back to legitimate work within safe boundaries, helping only people who could afford help, that felt like hiding again. Like choosing comfort over courage. She'd spent 3 years numb. Min-ho had made her feel alive. The work they did, messy, legally questionable, actually effective, that mattered more than legitimacy. I'm staying, she said into the darkness. His arms tightened around her. You're sure? Stop asking me that. She turned to face him. I'm sure. I spent 3 years punishing myself by hiding. You didn't let me hide, not my intelligence, not my body, not my capacity to feel. You've been obsessed with me, and it should scare me, but it doesn't. Because your obsession sees me completely, all the broken parts and all the brilliant parts. I'm not defaulting. I'm choosing. I'm choosing the work that matters, and I'm choosing you. His response was a bruising kiss, claiming, possessive, grateful. Then you're mine. Professionally and personally. I don't share, Caroline. Good. She kissed him back with equal intensity. Neither do I. Within a month, they'd formalized what had been operating informally. Park Maxwell Financial Recovery Services. A legitimate business entity operating in creative legal gray zones. They filed under a broad consulting license, an accounting sleight of hand that kept regulators satisfied without revealing purpose. They specialized in asset recovery for clients the traditional system had failed. Took cases on contingency for people who couldn't afford upfront fees. Min-ho provided capital and connections. Caroline provided expertise and legitimacy. The first day in their new office, Min-ho pulled her into the private conference room, locked the door. This is ours, he said, backing her against the antique desk that had once belonged to his grandfather. Everything we build from here, we build together. Equal partners. Equal partners who can't keep their hands off each other. Her smile was knowing as his hands found her waist. That's not a flaw in the business model. It's a feature. His mouth found her neck. The best one. A year later, Park Maxwell Financial Recovery Services had helped dozens of clients the traditional system had failed. Caroline stood in Min-ho's penthouse late one evening, city lights spread below them, his arms around her waist. No regrets, he asked. Caroline thought about the legitimate career she'd turned down. The safe path she'd rejected. The decision to operate in gray zones, to let herself be seen completely, to trust someone enough to be vulnerable. None, she said. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Seen, wanted, loved, and whole. Building empire in the shadows. Dancing in the light. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. Was it Caroline dancing alone when she thought no one was watching? Min-ho recognizing her worth when she'd forgotten it herself? Or perhaps that moment of forgiveness in the cafe that finally set her free from guilt? Share this with someone who believes in second chances and knows what it means to rebuild yourself after the world has tried to break you. And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more stories like this one waiting to be told. Until next time, remember, sometimes being truly seen is the most revolutionary act of all.